Hi, this is Bud Rebel, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Bud Rebel Show. We have such great guests. We have one today we're going to mention in a minute, but we also have some weird facts, things about leadership, issues, things I hate, some great business ideas, investments, and always some unique and interesting topics later on. My guest today is Kevin Savo, and I don't even know where to begin because he's a quite diverse person. He's got a little bit Bud Rebel spirit on his life. Kevin, if I'm correct, why don't you give us a little background about your filmmaking? You're actually a filmmaker too. Okay.
Filmmaker first and foremost. It's what I've been. It's like my only trade.
How long have you been being a filmmaker for? When did you get started? How did you get involved in it?
I consider it to be like I've only done it professionally 8 years or so, like with decent enough money to consider it like you're making semi-real independent films. So like the past 8 years or so, but tampering around with it my entire life. I'm one of three brothers, and we used to like roll around with the home VHS camera, make movies kind of thing.
So if I'm correct, you made 3 feature films.
3 feature films and 4 short films.
4 short films. You don't make anything in the short films.
We did like an episodic series that is like really more like a short film that has 3 sequels than an episodic series. So I consider those short films, but I'm not big on the short film thing in terms of.
How'd you get involved? I mean, you didn't go out and just all of a sudden make films? What were you doing before? How'd you decide to do this?
No, I really just kind of went out and started just making films. We were.
Oh, you went to college, I guess, right?
No, didn't go to college or high school or participate in anything I was supposed to.
Wait, so you didn't do any of that? How did you decide to make films?
I dropped out of high school to go to broadcasting school because I didn't want to learn what they were teaching me in high school. I wanted to learn how to cut footage, the basics of audio. So I went to a school that you can kind of pay into to learn the basics of that. And from that went into like labor work to keep my head above water, and then started wiggling my way into voiceover, local radio, little projects like that.
You have a good voice, it sounds like.
Things like that. Yeah, it developed over time.
So you started doing voiceover work while you were doing this and to raise additional money for ideas of films and stuff.
Yeah, at first I wanted to do anything involving film and audio, and now I really only want to fund and create my own films.
What's the most unique voice that you did as a voiceover? Do we know any of those voices?
I'm sorry, not necessarily voiceover, like commercial voiceover.
Okay.
I think they would refer to it as voiceover, but not voiceover in terms of like doing kooky characters or things like that.
Okay, it's more like a commercial.
Yeah, like radio commercials.
Do I know any of the radio commercials? Any of them?
I was the voice of Connecticut Central State University.
Ooh, Connecticut. Oh, that's
while.
Like everyone started Connecticut State Schools.
Yeah, I would never think anything of the scripts that they tossed me. Okay. I was the voice of that, and I can't remember what else. What I used to do is the shit talking political campaign ads locally, which was kind of cute. Taught me a little bit about politics too, actually, because
really?
I would do the when they want to make the other candidate look bad.
Yes.
So I was that guy.
Okay. So
for whatever party it was or whatever candidate was running for whatever kind of local politics it was, because I was never really versed in it. They would send me the scripts and I would do it. The reason I got out of it because I was 22 and impatient, and they wanted me to do like the goofier ads, and I thought I had the perfect voice for being like, is your credit fucked? Are you struggling at home? Mm-hmm. Then like an authentic kind of semi-monotone voice, which is what I thought they hired me for, but then they would give me all the goofy ads.
So you got out of this, you decided not to, and then you decide, what do you do? You're going to become at that point a filmmaker?
It's like film was lingering in the background of all of it.
Did you have a script already written? Did you write scripts before?
Yeah, I've probably written 40 scripts and only made 6 of them.
So how long does it take for you to write a script?
It varies. It varies based on the movie. Some you leave laying around forever, and then you pick back up years later, and you want to touch it up, and some come together quickly. The one that I'm shooting now was written in like 2 months.
The first script that you wrote, the first film, what's the name of it and what's it about?
My first feature is called The Opener, and it's like a semi-biographical parody on my life, and the feature that we're doing now is like a sequel to it.
Oh.
Yeah, it wasn't the first script I wrote, but I don't remember the first script I wrote.
So what motivates when you get to make a script? What, like, the characters, the storyline, what
humiliation, struggles in life, not feeling enough, like real life kind of motivation. I don't get motivated by aliens and sci-fi and fantasy. I get motivated by life.
So you've had a lot of struggles to get through.
Yeah. Grew up pretty white trash. Grew up around a bunch of interesting characters. Both my parents were drug addicts. They're both in recovery now. But
wow.
I had to raise my 2 younger brothers because they couldn't really get it done, and so I see a lot of the comedy in it though. So most of my stuff is comedy. It's not like a woe is me, life is so sad. It's when you grow up that way, you see the comedy in the dysfunction, because when you're young, you actually don't really see anything wrong with it if that's what you're brought up in. You're not always thrilled, but you make most of your earliest relationships with other kids that come from other broken homes, and nobody really sees just how messed up it all is because you can't look at it from an adult perspective. So it's all kind of fun having that little supervision, getting into that much trouble, everybody dropping out of school at the same time, everybody like getting semi-arrested at the same time, and you see kind of the comedy in it.
You know, that's a really amazing story in the sense that you had such a tough background growing up, and here you are an accomplished filmmaker. And you didn't go to filmmaking school, if you're telling me that correct.
I didn't want to go to film school because I just hated education. I hated having to sit through classes that I wasn't interested in, and I didn't want to go to film school because I didn't want to learn. I didn't want to have to go through science and math and history all over again. Like I just wanted to learn film, and from my understanding, it's like college. It's like any other college, and then there's the film aspect of it. So I was just like, I know I'm not going to get up for science and math class and all that. I just want to learn about film.
And when you do your first film, you have to hire a whole crew and a whole cast, and you're doing this all yourself. How do you know who to hire? How do you know how to get involved in it? I mean, do you experience with lighting before, then editing, filmmaking?
You learn everything as you go. You learn everything about film by doing everyone's job when you don't have the money or the resources or the connections to hire everybody to do every job necessary on a film set. I think Scorsese said that at one point. It made me feel a little bit better, that your best experience in film and directing and how to run the ship is going to be all the years of not having the money to hire sound, so you're doing sound, or hire production assistants, so you're the production assistant as well as the director, as well as trying to finagle how to run sound at the same time. So you deal with enough shit show scenarios and figure out a way to make it work, and then by the time you actually have some help and some resources, you kind of sympathize with everybody's position because you did all that, and you know how everything's supposed to work because you had to do that. So I think you can learn film on your own just fine by actually, going through it. It's the same way I learned acting. In my first couple of movies, I really wasn't that great of an actor, and I was always looking for like the kind of cheat code on how to be a better actor. And as I improved as an actor, I started thinking, I don't know if you can teach it. I'm really not too sure you can teach theatrics like that, because I think just like 6-7 years of doing it until you can do it in your sleep is how I discovered it anyways. So if somebody wanted to learn on the spot, how can I be better with my micro expressions, or how can I be more in the moment? I only have so many tips, but the rest of it, like anything else in life, you learn through experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting because people spend like so much college education for music or acting, and they spend so much, and then there's somebody who's like a 6-year-old kid who makes a song or becomes an actor and becomes a phenomenal success. It's the dichotomy of two different worlds, you might say, how one of them makes and one doesn't in that way. It's very interesting.
I think you learn most things in life by doing.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah. But now, when your first film, I mean, I don't know if you want to get too much of the budget. How much do you spend on a film to make it?
$8,000 over the course of 3 years.
$8,000, that's all you did?
Yeah, I funded it out of various different day jobs that I could barely hold for more than like 3 months at a time, and just stacked up my money.
And
but
over 3 years?
Over the course of 3 years, which
how about the actors? Did the actors change? How many actors did you have in the first film?
The same people I'm working with today. Yeah, my brothers, family, friends, and there was almost no legitimate talent or crew in that first one.
And did you make money in the first film?
Yeah, like out of ticket sales from the one showing that we did. So we made back like $1,500 or so. But we knew we weren't in it to make money. We knew it wasn't going to get distribution. And the biggest mistake that we made that early on was nobody thought about not having logos in the damn thing. So we wore every logo that you're not supposed to wear or that you don't own. I mean, everything from PlayStation to the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, pictures of Rocky Balboa on your shirt, pictures of Tupac on your shirt. It's like we just didn't think about it. In a bar scene, we had a scene in a bar, we're all drinking Bud Lights. It looks like a damn Bud Light ad. This is just a couple of things that nobody thought about. So we kind of knew from the jump that wasn't going to go anywhere, but that we needed to have our first semi-legit feature film. And it kind of flows. It kind of has the structure that you expect a feature to have, so it plays okay.
How long was the film?
90 minutes.
90 minutes, wow. Yeah. And the second feature film, when is that came out?
That did not come out. I'm still waiting to hear from distribution on when that's going to come out.
Oh, yeah, distribution.
That's a horror film.
Oh.
And that is...
that's your life story.
So, in a way. That's the first legit film I did.
I'm going to take a little commercial break because I have something very interesting to break into in a second. Okay, we're back. You just mentioned about having a hillbilly white I don't want to say white
Not
trash.
necessarily hillbilly, just like very like dysfunctional and ridiculous. Are we allowed to curse on here?
You already did, so it's too
I
late
did?
now.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll bleep it. My bad.
My rabbi won't like it, but it's fine. But right now, today, the person that was picked as vice president is J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is a very interesting character. J.D. Vance came from the, quote, hillbillies of West Virginia. His mother was a drug addict, and his father left him, and he had a rough upbringing too, and he barely made it to college. And
So
it's
he's
very
a much different character than Trump then.
Yeah, a much different character, and it's just it's very interesting because some people get stuck. You know, what you did is really almost heroic. How you can come from a bad background like that and do well, and yet you have people that come from like pretty decent backgrounds and they screw it up. I mean, what motivated you at a young age to say, you know what, I'm not going to end up like my parents. I'm not going to. I don't know if you had any drug problems at all, but I get to pass that to go to know that you're going to make something of yourself. I mean, you don't have your parents' influence. Who influenced you to get out of that situation?
I think it's kind of like anything else, and I think a lot of filmmakers relate to this early on in life, that your parents aren't your heroes, and certainly with kind of like they talk more and more about like a lost generation of men who don't know how to be men, and most of those cats can relate to, like, you look up to Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger before you look up to your dad, whoever your dad is, whether he's just too dysfunctional to look up to or whether he's too much of an average Joe to look up to. He doesn't look like a superhero to you. And then when you have parents that are drug addicts, it's to be honest with you, I don't know how I didn't turn out like them. Maybe God, because it is psychologically backwards to not become like your family.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form, most of us can identify what's wrong with our family members, but we don't see it in ourselves. We don't see the way in which that they've passed all these traits down to us, and we become very defensive to a point where we can kind of point out like mom and dad's fucked up traits and everybody in the family's messed up traits, and not see it in ourselves. So honestly, I don't know. I just knew I didn't want to be like them.
And did your brothers and sisters end up okay as well?
It's just two brothers, and yeah, they turned out okay.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, we all do it together.
I mean, you mentioned something, and this is sort of interesting cause that I heard you involved with, like men's motivation. You do speaking about it.
See, that was something that I kind of got roped into, and it was cool for a little while. But like any sort of internet movement, everything gets like taken out of whack eventually.
Okay.
You know how like you're like a relatively conservative cat, right?
Yeah.
So you know how like the easy thing we can identify in liberals is that like the basis of most kind of liberal ideology is just like be good to one another, accept everybody, don't judge anybody unfairly, and everybody agreed with that just fine like 20 years ago, and today all that has turned, if they found a way somehow to turn that crazy, where now it's like let's like run up on everybody that isn't nice to everyone and start trouble, and it's like this whole different thing. Well, like the conservative side of things has the same problems. Like everything kind of starts out as like it was like a somewhat conservative men's movement, which is like men need to find discipline again, men need to find honor again, and reason to be more powerful than what the joke of this generation represents in terms of manhood. And it gets pretty wacky, so I didn't stay in it too long. But that was something I got roped into because there were a couple of influential characters in that space of like internet male motivation that I had star as cameos in our films. And they kind of were like, oh, we like what you're doing. Let's fund you a little bit, and let's bring you further into what we do. And then they're inviting me to speak at men's conferences. And they're like, we want you to motivate a bunch of guys that aren't doing shit with their lives. And everybody on the bill is like a multimillionaire besides me, and I'm 25. And I was just saying no. I'm like, what are you, out of your mind? What am I going to motivate with? How am I going to motivate these people? Like, I'm semi put together. Like, I'm there just because I'm not a loser, but I'm not really a success either. And they'd be like, no, trust me, come do it. And I'd be like, all right.
And you motivated some people.
That became a thing for a little while. Yeah,
that's cool. I mean,
it was cute for a little while.
The thing is, in today's society, it's a very interesting thing. What is the man's role? What is it? Because they used to say this patriarch, I forget the word, that we a patriarchal society, and how that's quote bad. And I don't think that's either bad or good in this sense. I think the idea that a father figure gave you strength and balance, and I'm not saying that every family is the same, but it's important to have a strong father and a mother in your life that help balance your life. And I think that we're missing that a lot. And a lot of men, don't feel like they can stand up for what they believe in. Almost, it's actually they actually are much quiet about what they believe than they used to be, because of like the society has changed so drastically.
Truthfully, I wish I never talked about any of it.
Yeah,
not just because you want to be as least controversial as possible when it comes to doing what we do, film and acting, and most of the film industry is liberal, and you don't want to ruffle any feathers. But I see much less value in my stances and opinions on anything the older I get. The more I want to talk less, the louder the world gets. Because as I got older, started seeing less and less value in, like, I have a stance. I have a stance on, like, just as like a regular citizen, you know what I mean? As a regular citizen, people feel so much pride in, like, here's my stance on abortion. And it's kind of like, excellent. That's great for you. And like, it would, you know what I mean? Like, you're just like another regular person, but this is my stance. And everybody's like, oh my goodness, he has a stance. And I want it to be less and less like that. The louder the world became. And I got tired of talking about these subjects with like casually. Like the more and more it came up casually, the more it came up on like dates amongst friend groups. I can't think of anything less sexy to talk about on a date than politics. I'd rather like.
Yeah, it's different for me.
But that.
It's different for me. I like talking about things that mean things to me. Like, I'm very motivated, and I just feel like things are really messed up in the world. And I think the reason they're messed up is, of course, the political environment that we're in right now. And I think that's why I need changes. And I just feel like we're only here for a short time, that if we can influence people to think differently, we might be able to change the world little by little. And that's why I see it. Okay, I got a weird fact for you. I heard that you might be a little bit into conspiracy theories, but this is not a conspiracy. This is actually true. In 1966, the U.S. Army released a harmless, quote, like, germ in the New York City subway to see how it would react. They actually did that.
You said in the 60s?
In 1966,
They unleashed a germ into the subways.
New York City subway.
Wasn't there enough germs to begin with?
They just
on
wanted
the
to see how.
subways in New York?
Yeah, no, but it's true. But they wanted to see the reaction of what they could do about it. And it's like, I think in the 60s also, they used to experiment. They used to use people for the LSD test. Like, a lot of weird stuff they used to do. I mean, you got some good, interesting
I'm not
conspiracy.
fantastically versed in all that, but I'm aware of all those conspiracies, and they're all probably true. I think we live in a day and age now where I think the system knows that the public was growing increasingly more aware of everything they tried to keep from us, and now they're just letting it fly. And I think what they like to do is they like to let the most controversial, wacky characters say what the truth is, the things that are going on behind the scenes, and the things that the shadow government does. And it's sort of like, if we let Trump say it, he's so unappealing to younger people because they're so off-put by him that then truths will be associated with him, and then nobody will want to speak the truth. That's my ultimate theory. Like, there's always, if you don't mind me going off for a second, there's always been such a thing as rigged elections. Why wouldn't you, if you have the power to sway an outcome, why wouldn't you do it? Right. And it's been done throughout history. In the 90s, George Carlin would talk about it, and it was a little bit more like thought-provoking because he was a liberal, and it was... I've always, before Trump ever ran for office, I knew that there was such a thing as kind of swaying the outcome of what you want, especially if you have the power to do it. But they let him go off about it. And as soon as he said rigged election, now if you want to be respected at all as an intellectual, you wouldn't want to admit that's a thing, because you don't want to be associated with him, or most people don't.
Now, I think that still changed a bit. That's why he's doing so well in the polls. But I actually believe that the idea that they went and canceled like almost any thought about a rigged election this one time, as soon as Trump did it, it was like, you know what, now you can't think. Most people don't want to be told what to think. And so I made people think a lot. Why are they telling these thoughts that make sense? Like, why did Biden do so much better in an African-American community than Barack Obama? Why at the end of the night, at the beginning of the night, Trump was leading in like all these states, and at the end of the night, he was losing? I mean, why all of a sudden, I think it was Georgia, one of the states, they had all of a sudden, they couldn't count the votes, and all of a sudden they counted. There were so many weird things that happened. And even if you just went with one fact, that with the COVID, they had these special ballot boxes where they didn't check them, and they let people just throw them in.
About all that.
And so there was a lot of weird things that happened. So for people to say, okay, this election, it's fine, Biden won, it was like, why can't we investigate? What I would think should happen, which I'm going to actually bring up, my political ideas, is that they should, every election, check to see how they can make it better the next election.
It's
every
honestly,
election they should.
But it's not made to be that way.
It should be. I'm saying every election they should see what has done wrong, and how can we make it better? Because no matter what, there were mistakes made. And they should have people from the right and the left sitting in it and deciding what they could have done differently, and they should implement that.
I don't think election fraud is a mistake. I think the people that control the system can get whatever outcome they want, and it's always been that way. Famously, and it was famously reported, they pushed Bernie Sanders out of the race because they wanted Hillary Clinton to run against Trump. Yeah. That's just the way the people that control and run the system wanted it to be. So they tampered with the votes. They rigged it so that they could get Bernie Sanders out of there.
I mean,
and him being the politician that he is, being more by the book, he didn't make a big deal out of it. But it was public news that they did that.
I mean, I thought it was weird that no Democrat could run against Joe Biden. It was very strange. I mean, that was bizarre to me this year. I mean, when you talk about conspiracy theories, how deep do you go? Do you think there's UFOs that the government's hiding?
UFOs are more accepted conspiracies than anything Trump says. That's kind of what's interesting. Like that's considered like the fun stuff now. Nobody gets offended by it, but everybody's feelings are tied up in anything related to Trump or what's going on now. I think the ultimate conspiracy is that over the past 20 years, I think that they found a way to get everybody who wasn't engaged in politics engaged by giving us these characters. So I do kind of think Trump's a part of it too. I think you got Trump, Biden, Hillary Clinton. I guess Bernie Sanders was interesting. They're all like kind of provocative characters. Whereas if 20 years ago, who was running 20 years ago?
See, I happen to disagree. I
20 years ago, it wasn't as interesting. So I think that there were much more young people that are like, you know what my like religion and political ethics are, like skateboarding, smoking weed, doing art. I think there were people that were like much less engaged. And now anybody can talk politics because I'm gonna be the one cat that admits that I can talk with this. I could talk about this with you because it's 2024, and like I'm mostly versed in the same kind of shenanigans that surround all these candidates. I'm more versed in that, just like most other people are my age, than I am in like foreign policy or like anything that the president actually has to do.
See, I have to disagree. I think Trump upset the whole balance, and that's why with the first time he walked down that escalator to the amount of campaigning to stop him, all the way to I'm not even sure. This might be pushing it. I hate to say this on TV, but the shot they took on Trump. I mean, that there was no Secret Service that could see a building, that they didn't inspect that building and see about it. All these things just stopped Trump. And now think about it. He was the only president that said these things. One, I'm going to put an embassy in Jerusalem. All the other presidents said they were going to do it. He did it. He's the only president that there was no wars during his presidency. The military complex didn't like that too much. He went against the CIA. He went to visit the guy from North Korea. That was bold. No one even thought the things he was doing were so upsetting the nature of what the business of government was supposed to be that I think they wanted to stop him. And I think that I remember one part was very interesting. Chuck Schumer said, and I'm not quoting this, he's going against the CIA? Yeah, let's see what happens to him.
Can you think of an assassination on a president or an attempted assassination on a U.S. president that wasn't linked to an FBI or CIA conspiracy?
Conspiracy. No, I remember things.
None.
No, but the weird thing about this one, and this isn't even hot. This is just the news. This is actually news. There was a police officer that went up, saw the guy with the gun, and walked away. And a minute later, the president was shot.
It was definitely allowed to happen. It was made to be possible for a shooter to be able to.
And that's what I'm saying. They've been trying to get him with lawfare, and they're trying to get him with everything they could.
So I'm mostly a conservative cat, but the like stupid Trumper shit will be that it was like a conspiracy from the left, from Biden. That's definitely not the case.
I don't know what it was.
I
don't know what it was. I just think it shows
not a violent attack from one candidate's party to
you
another.
Can't say, I don't think it is now, but what makes me what makes it very weird to me is all these little things that should have been taken care of, and all the attacks on him, because again, you're right. The big deep state hates Trump because he's destroying the deep state, and that more than anybody else. So I'm just wondering, just to put it out there, my own little conspiracy theory.
No, but a lot of people are wondering that right now.
Yeah, and it's a sad state when you don't trust your government, when you see that there's so many things that have been so unethical, whether it was PTA parents were going against, like they didn't like what the school was teaching, and they had the FBI investigating them. I mean, weird things like, and just the idea that they had people that were like on the conservative line, and the IRS watching them much more than somebody else. So it's like there are things that make you think, I don't know. It doesn't sound kosher, you might say. Okay, so much about that. Leadership. What are we looking for a leader in the presidential election? And I'll give you two things that I always think about now. One is I want a leader that's flexible with today's times. Not somebody who's just I'm this way, and that's the way it is.
How flexible you think Trump is?
I think he was very okay. So I'm an old school Republican. So when I was younger, I believed in everybody can come to this country because I think it's nice that everyone was open, we let the border be open, blah blah. And then he opened my eyes that it's not all nice people coming.
Yeah.
Some people are drug dealers. Some of them they take women and they make them sex trades. Some of them are terrorists. So there's a lot of bad people that come by too, and that's why you have to protect your borders. And then the second thing was war. I was gung ho, bring the United States, bring freedom around the world, democracy. We need that, and I realized that's a lot of BS too, because some people don't want that. They don't. You can give them all they want. They don't want it, and we just end endless wars. So he changed my whole idea, and even the idea of tariffs. I was totally against tariffs. I thought, oh, we are a free marketplace, let it all go. But they're not playing the same rules. So he's actually changed the party so much. And now by putting this guy, J.D. Vance, in, who's a working class guy from West Virginia, poor guy, growing up, they're just becoming the blue collar group. They're becoming the Democrats of old times, in the sense that they represent unions and the people that of their jobs, and it's a total change in the party itself. So yeah, I think it's very different.
So that makes him flexible?
Well, I don't know that he's flexible at that, but
I like Trump just fine. Also,
no.
Flexible, I wouldn't say. He's
I don't
more
know.
like a dude who never stretches.
I don't know because I'll give you. J.D. Vance, and you should look this up. J.D. Vance, when he first got to office, he actually was one of the biggest critics. He was an anti-Trump.
I was reading that today.
So just by that,
so
alone,
he had a change of heart, or he just wants some political opportunity there for his career.
But Trump taking somebody who's so against him and making him his vice president, that's pretty flexible.
Now the playing field's really equal because Kamala Harris had a lot of shit to say about Biden.
That is right.
And now
true.
but on both of their parts, like JD and Kamala probably were just like
Kamala's a better laugh.
Well, yeah, but they were probably like both just kind of like we're gonna do what we can for our career.
Right. I guess so. I don't know. Hopefully that's not the case. I don't know. Okay, so this is the issue now. If you are running for president, how well do you run the executive branch? So here's an example. The Secret Service is run by President Biden. He's in charge. He's and they failed. And now if they're running, that's part. How well can they manage being an executive? And there again, I would give that to Trump because he was an executive. I wouldn't give it to Biden because the way the country and the government is being run is terrible. The amount of money they spend on infrastructure, the same roads look terrible to me.
I don't know. The way it all feels to me is like the presidents are there now just to, and the candidates are there to just like upset 25-year-olds. And there's still like a massive network behind the presidency that actually runs the show. And then characters like Trump and Biden are there to like upset people in my age group and really speak to us. You know what I mean? And speak to like our feelings so that we get upset enough to like debate these things amongst each other and possibly vote. And we get caught up in all the smear.
It's going to be very interesting because Biden and Trump actually said this is going to be a time when we're going to bring harmony. We all should be together after the shooting. So
that Biden was saying that. I'm like, he's talking about let's bring down the temperature.
Right. And
he's talking about one of two characters that like they couldn't cool down, like a fucking freezer. Honestly, we're going to cool down the temperature now.
Supposedly Trump's changing his speech to be much more unity, and it's going to be very interesting.
Too late now. Those two they did a good enough time to just. I know they did a good enough job.
Biden
making people
set
upset.
a bullseye just the day before they shot him. It's a little weird. All of a sudden, I mean, he's saying he's going to destroy democracy. That's it makes people pretty motivated not to vote for the man.
Well, everything they ran against each other on was all smear. That this one's a racist. This one had sex with a porn star. This one used to hang with segregationists. And then I think mostly the youth responded to the smear as if any of that meant anything. Like all the racist stuff that surrounds Trump is sort of like what people don't realize when they get caught up in that is they're not entertaining what would be better for you to take out your opponent than to stick them with something like racism, sexism, bigotry.
But it's so
who wouldn't do
silly.
something like that to take out their competition?
It's so silly with Trump because he's He's worked with so many different people. His kids are Jewish. That whole thing with anti-Semitism, these grandchildren.
Anti-Semitism, anti-black,
it's so silly.
All of these things are the most optimal thing to stick on your competitor.
Used to knock you right out.
Do you know what's actually funny? I'll tell you real quick. You know how I said I did voiceovers earlier? Yeah. We were talking about when I did radio shows. I actually was thinking about this earlier, and that's why I view a lot of the smear that the politicians throw at each other this way is because I said I used to do the shit talk in political ads. And this was just for local politicians. So I'm like 21 and they send me an ad to do. They're like, hey, this is for someone who's like running for like some kind of state position, or it might have been more local than that. I'm not versed in local politics. So they give me this thing and I'm supposed to talk bad about the politician's competitor. And the script was like, don't vote for this guy because he was in favor of rape on college campuses. So first of all, I'm thinking like even on a local level, the way they'll smear each other for votes, right. Like even in local politics. So I called them back and I'm like, you want me to say this? I'm like, who in the fuck is in favor of rape? You can't vote for rape. I bet this is something that was never said. Right, you guys want to say something that extreme? And they're like, dude, just say it. Say it and send it back to us. So I'm like, all right, fine. So I sent it back to them. I think it aired for 2 days. And they got like 80 phone calls, and they had to pull it. I'm like, of course you had to pull it.
That's But no, but see, I mean, let's forget about all I think. But I mean, I just feel again, politics actually doesn't really affect my life. I mean, in terms of the way I am, just put it that way.
I just talk about it for sport.
But honestly, it affects and this is why I'm passionate about it. It affects a lot of people that I know. I mean, there's 2 wars that we didn't have before. One in Israel. I'm Jewish and very pro-Zionist. The one in Ukraine, which we didn't have before, which 1,000 people dying. We have inflation that's hurting all my friends and family trying to buy things. They go to a grocery store, trying to eat food. The prices don't have to go. This never happened like this in ages. Yeah, it's going down a little bit now. You have interest rates going up. People are suffering. And things and people, kids in school, instead of talking about reading and writing, they're learning about what type of sex they want to be at, like it's grammar school. It's silly stuff. And these things that are going on, that bothers me. Forget about all this other stuff. And so, yes, to me, it has to change back. That's really where it comes from.
I mean, it'd be nice. Politics doesn't affect my life. Social issues, I think, affects my industry. And the social issues are kind of pushed by the politicians to sway the youth. So, like we work in film. So that's like a heavily liberal industry, like from the top all the way down to independent film. So I find those environments now to be a little more tense, and everybody's like a little bit more on guard. And a couple of years back, I didn't have to worry about like, you hire an AC or a production assistant, and you start to hear things like, oh, it'd be great to be involved as long as none of you are white supremacists. And I'm like, is this a thing? Is that something you find common? You get involved with a film and it turns out it was like executive produced by the Klan. Is that common? And none of these things were anything that anybody thought about until like Trump and Biden were throwing these kind of terms at each other. And now everybody's like super on guard and they're looking for
But don't think it doesn't affect you in art, because the Oscars now, they're not talking about talented people.
And I don't like politically motivated art. I don't like social issue motivated art. You're supposed to connect, especially in film, you're supposed to connect with the film through the heart of the character, not the character's like social or political stance.
And sometimes it's, it can be done in a subtle way so people can just understand your point without being over the top, which is fine. But if it's not entertaining, there's no point. But I'm saying the Oscars, they're like, oh, how many African Americans, how many Hispanics, and it's like, no. How good is the quality? And that's the same thing when we're talking about work and government. It shouldn't be about what color, creed, religion. It should be about what's the best quality. And you're going to find the best of every type. But you should never worry about how many of this and how many of that. And that's happening a lot with the films too. It's going to be much harder.
It's harder to run scripts past people. I'm doing a movie right now. I remember like the first person that read it was a woman that was like, there's no strong female characters in this. And I was like, there's no strong male characters either. All the men are idiots and all the girls are crazy. It's a comedy.
Right. And
it's like, it just should be like a female running for Congress in the midst of like relationship drama amongst 26 to 28 year olds in this like stupid comedy we're doing. I'm like, do we have to take a stand for something every time? Just Christ, I think I'm a feminist just because I made a horror movie that mostly stars women, because women love horror more than they love like a film that's like somehow pro-abortion. Like I'm a firm believer that women don't want to like take a stand against the patriarchy every single time they go to a movie theater.
I think it's boring.
Women love horror movies. They love murder documentaries.
I think it's boring to have the same type of story going on over and over again. It's the same characters.
Well, every character, you're supposed to be able to look at characters in film and see yourself in it. So if you're like a politically charged, wannabe social activist, and you go to college and like that's all you identify with at a particular time in your life, maybe those films will resonate with you. But I'm just still thinking on like a human level, every single film and television show you watch, that's what you're looking to align with. What about the time that you were heartbroken? Like, what about the time that,
Right.
your dad passed away? Or what about the time that you went through something really difficult in your life, or your parents divorced? Or you should see that in characters. I like to write characters that look like they never voted.
Well,
They're just caught up in their own
like
emotions.
I like characters that are different than your lifestyle, but somehow they have the same heart that you have.
Yeah.
So they're going through the same garbage that you're going through because you relate to that part of it. Not that, and they take you on a different journey because maybe they're a fisherman and you've never been a fisherman or whatever the heck it is. But that fisherman still has problems with his kids and problems still paying the bills. So he's got the same issues that you might have, even though he's in this world of fishermen. So it gives you a little different journey, but still you relate to it because you've gone through the same experiences. And that, I think that's what you should do, basically.
I think most people that write politically charged films are people that haven't really experienced life. I've had a couple of these scripts come across my desk, and I'm like, who wrote this?
Yeah,
I'm
sometimes
like,
it's
it
just
kind of
boring.
seems like somebody that's never really
Sometimes
experienced anything but the news.
Sometimes it's a little boring.
Yeah.
Business ideas. All right.
You want to know about my business ideas?
Yeah, you can, but I'm going to be one right now, giving away to the
I don't have
audience.
any.
Oh, okay. This is, I don't know if I'll come with this one. It used to happen a lot when iPhones came out and stuff like that. People used to wait on lines like crazy for other stuff. Or when you want to get tickets to something, wait in line. This person would just wait in line and get you the tickets you want, the items you want, whenever you want it. You just call the number. I want it. They'll get it for you. Pay a certain fee, and they just do that job for you.
You're waiting in line for something?
They wait in line for you.
Oh, okay.
They wait in line. They wait on the phone for you. They do everything that you need. Don't feel like it wastes time for you. They do that work for you. That way people feel more comfortable.
You're going to get it started?
Maybe someone out there will, and I'll invest in it.
Okay. They better call you. Can't just run off with your idea.
Usually I have investment ideas for today, but I'm going to hold on. I'm going to give you the idea, but I think the stock has to go down. It's called Roblox, RBLX, Roblox. And what they do, and I'm not that familiar with it, is they help build video games. Stock's a little high right now. I'm going to wait till it falls down a little bit, and then I'm going to look into invest in it. Yeah.
It's interesting for you. Investing in something video game related, I wouldn't have thought.
No, I always try to have different markets.
Sounds familiar too.
Roblox, yeah, they were around. They were doing really well during the pandemic. That was really a big time for them. So I wanted to ask you on other conspiracies. So you were saying when you were talking conspiracy, you've known a lot. A Bigfoot exist or not?
Again, more of the fun stuff. That's all the fun stuff that nobody's like terribly affected by or terribly high strung about. Yeah, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness monster. That's all the cute stuff.
So the serious stuff, does the deep state really exist?
Oh, absolutely, of course. Yeah.
And does the deep state really run everything?
Yeah, you know what I want to know from a cat that's your age is I want to know like what was your impression and what do you think most people's impression of George Carlin was when he was alive? Because he died when I was about 10. There was like probably the most mainstream, most socially accepted character that was publicly saying things about the deep state, about how elections are rigged, about how this country was bought and paid for a long time ago, and the politicians are they're just there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice, but you don't. And that was like on HBO. That was like he was a very successful comedian. He had like some odd 12 HBO specials. Do you remember being aware of him at all when he was like popular? Because
I wasn't. I was probably on the other side. I'm not that old.
No. Well, he's not. Well, he hasn't been gone that long. I just mean that like I wasn't alive when he was really popular in saying these things. Today, it's like retroactive, looking back and like look what was said long ago. And look what's playing out now.
I've been one of the few people, a Jewish conservative Republican, since I was Ronald Reagan days, and that was when Jimmy Carter was. And I was always that whole thing. And Trump was the last person of all the Republicans I was voting for. He was the last. I started out with all the regular same people that I normally had. But as I got to know, I learned that being more flexible to understand that some things you believed in weren't always right. And there was a way to change it. So it wasn't in that flow, you might say.
Yeah, so the deep state.
So the deep state, I never thought about a deep state, but the more I think about it, even with Biden being president, he's not really, anybody didn't believe in the deep state now. They must believe it now.
Yeah, and I thought Bush Jr. was a good enough example of like, you think he's running the country? I mean, the guy looked like he couldn't tie his shoes. And then now you have Trump, then you had Obama, you had Trump, and then now you got Biden, who looks like you don't know where he is anytime he's speaking.
Yeah,
so that's just, any actual grown adult that believes that he is actually in charge of anything can be misled way too easily.
Before the debate, some people actually believe he was
also
in charge.
people don't look at UN documentation and things like that. I mean, there's things that are funky conspiracies, and there's things that have been on paper forever. So the plan for Agenda 2021, which is a 20-year plan to transform the world into chaos, completed in 2021. So the year before it, no surprise, was like the big finale of that 20-year agenda to skew us into a new, really kind of chaotic area. So 2020, look at 2020. It was like, this is our last year of this planned agenda. So it's like the finale, the works, the COVID, the riots, everything. And then by 2021, the world looks so different than it looked in 2019. And now we're on the path of Agenda 30, which is a 10-year plan to just, we're done after this. This is going to be like the enslavement of the world after 2030.
Well, there's no way to stop
and
it.
This is a crucial election year. So I was just talking to my brother the other day about we're halfway through 2024. It's an election year. It's the second time Trump and Biden are running against each other, and things feel a little bit too calm. Like 3 hours later, they try to shoot Trump. And I'm like, see, look at how, like, the same thought I was having, that's the same thought the deep state's having, the shadow government's having. They're like, okay, we need to ramp things up. The last time these two ran against each other was in the midst of absolute chaos, playing on everybody's emotion. There's plenty to distract people with, so they could do whatever they want behind the scenes, rid the country of all its money through COVID and everything that happened. So the rich get richer, the poor get poorer during an event like that, during a year like that. Then you got these two knuckleheads running against each other in the midst of it all. And this has been a relatively calm year. So they were like, how can we stir this up? And I think from this point on to the election is going to be chaos.
Really?
Well, that is what sways the opinion. I mean, you got to have people in a state of fear. If people aren't afraid, they might just tune out and say, I'm done with this charade. It's been like 8 years of politics being a charade. Before that, it was like so routine and so boring. I think most people with artistic interests didn't even want to get involved. And now if you're an artist, you might align more and have more of an identity that comes from politics, when we should have gotten our damn identity from painting.
So you think that there's going to be chaos coming up?
Yeah, talk to me right before the election.
And what kind of chaos do you think is going to happen?
Oh man, it's going to be I expect more rioting and things like that. They got to get back out into the street. People got to get back out into the street.
You think those riots that happen are set up by like the deep state?
Not set up, but they influence everybody to do that. Like there's always some event that influences people. People got to get out into the streets, make trouble, and then people at home got to sit back and go, "Oh my goodness, what can I do to stop this?"
You know what got me conspiratorial about the whole COVID thing was when all of a sudden
that you could walk around without getting sick just easily.
No, initially they had masks on all the time.
I didn't wear masks the whole time.
And then after that they had the protest, and they said, "Oh well, these protests are healthy," and I'm like, "Wait, that makes no sense. How could a protest?" Yeah, outside? And then all of a sudden, then the masking was like that. It just showed how a charade it was.
Remember the news clips that said, "Wear a mask unless you're protesting"?
Yeah.
They were aired very briefly, taken off very briefly, but that was a time of everything that came out on television contradicted itself, and all the regulations contradicted itself. And I was like, I'm like a grown adult. Like I can see what's going on here. Like the whole thing's a freaking charade. And
even the thing with that definitely didn't come from a lab. Like anytime someone says definitely something like this, without researching, it makes you wonder. Like, what is the whole thing going on?
Yeah. I'm glad that they're being hard on Fauci finally.
Yeah.
He's just such an irritating character.
All right. So I'm going to go with our final thoughts about life that I have right now.
About life in general?
No, about life. You're talking about all this about us having chaos happening, but hopefully your predictions will not come true, God willing. And in life, you have to have your relaxation spot, a place to stay calm and just meditate, you might even say. And it's amazing because what I found is just something my daughter told me about years ago, and it's just jumping in a lake. I just love, it just brings me to a different spot. You have to find your spot that you can relax, meditate, calm yourself down, because as you say, there's a lot of turmoil in the world, and we need a place to think and calm down ourselves. So remember that. So if people want to know more about you and how they can get involved in your films or normal things, how can they find you, Kevin?
Just punch me in on Instagram, Kevin Savo _ one word.
Just Instagram? Facebook?
Yeah, I'm not big on promoting myself. Hopefully one of the films kind of just takes care of itself.
when
That
can-
it
when-
has a good run on streaming.
And when can we see any of your films? How can we see your films? out there?
I'm waiting to hear back from distribution on the date for the horror movie. I know they want to avoid October because they don't want competition.
And the first movie, can we still see that at all? No.
Yeah, the first movie's for free on YouTube. That's called The Opener. The horror film is called Rerouting. That should be out in the next couple of months, but I'm waiting to hear back on the exact date. And we're doing the sequel to The Opener, which is called The Headliner. And I'm already making phone calls about that. That's like 60% done, and we'll see what happens with that.
All right, very good.
But, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin.
Hey,
it's always
thanks
a
for
pleasure.
having me on, my friend. Appreciate you.
Okay, that's a